They remembered Earth only when it became impossible to ignore the council chamber on Vallis Concord, had not prepared for a human arrival. Certainly not under such circumstances, and definitely not backed by a vessel the size of a lunar capital. Port drifting just outside neutral airspace, unannounced, unmapped, and unmoved by protocol or expectation, Ambassador Elena Rees stepped into the central ring with the quiet authority of someone who had walked into more dangerous rooms than this one. A tall woman in the silver-blue formal uniform of the Terran. Strategic command, carrying herself not like a politician trying to impress, but like a commander measuring every presence in the room against risk and consequence. Her posture straight, her dark hair pulled back in a tight braid that bore no decoration, her eyes calm, but so sharply observant that even Counselor Vayrix of the Cheronthi flinched when their gazes met Vayrix, whose species had developed 1,000 forms of passive intimidation, leaned back with a calculated sneer, and his twin tongues hissed in unison as he said, "The Council does not recognize military vessels at peace conferences, especially ones that have evaded all standard entry codes, and brought no delegate list." But Elena's reply came not as a protest or apology, but as a measured correction, spoken with clear precision and complete ownership of the room. The vessel outside is not a warship by category. It is diplomatic command class, and the delegates listed are encoded under the original Earth accession clause filed under Treaty Reference 7.14a. The Council may have archived it, but we did not. The chamber reacted as one would expect from a room of interstellar powers, suddenly reminded that their archives held something they had collectively chosen to forget. Murmurs flickered like static across the delegates' comlinks. Some whispered to aides, others sent discreet commands to their ships to verify this treaty reference she spoke of. But the confirmation arrived before the panic could fully bloom. It was real, old, but active, filed under the joint signatures of humanity's first contact, delegation and the founding signatories of the Galactic Council. A dormant entry never revoked, merely marked as pending response. Counselor Schur of the Kelvi Syndicate, who had once led entire defense fleets across the scorched belt, narrowed his eyes and studied Elena with the same careful intensity he used in war rooms, then asked without posturing, "Why respond now, and why with that ship?" Elena didn't shift, didn't blink, didn't defend the delay as misunderstanding or accident. She simply said, "Because now we are ready to attend." And when she handed over the encoded quantum drive containing 200 years of human intelligence observations complete with time-stamped council decisions, border skirmishes, trade corruption files, and defense anomalies, she added, "You assumed our silence meant absence, but silence is a strategic choice when noise has no consequence." That was when they realized Earth hadn't forgotten the Council. It had studied it, quietly, thoroughly, for 2 centuries, and it had sent a black ship, not to ask for a seat, but to remind them that Earth had never left the table at all. It was not the black ship's presence that unsettled them most. It was how calmly it remained idle while holding the attention of every long-range orbital array in Vallis Concord's orbital lattice, not by threat display or maneuver, but by the simple impossibility of its architecture. No registry, no known material classification, no detectable propulsion wake, and yet it moved with precision that left even the Ixari engineers guessing if it was piloted at all. Ambassador Elena Rees continued to engage as if none of it needed explaining, as if her vessel's unknowns were just a courtesy humanity had granted to keep the conversation civil. And when Counselor Illick of the Shavari Collective asked whether the Terran state understood the risk of returning to a political body it had ignored for generations, Elena folded her hands, waited until silence held, then spoke in that even tone of hers that neither demanded attention nor gave any room for interruption. "We did not ignore you, we observed you, and we came now because observation must eventually be followed by engagement. especially when strategic clarity depends on it. Counselor Varix pushed further, leaning forward with the narrowed eyes of someone trying to provoke doubt. Strategic clarity is often a euphemism for power assertion, Ambassador, and your ship outside seems designed to assert quite a lot. But Elena did not blink. She only gestured toward the viewscreen, where Earth's planetary fleet had just decloaked in synchronous orbital positions, each warship broadcasting a signal package marked TSPA-2, the Terran Sovereignty Protocol. There were no missiles launched, no weapons charged, no fleets repositioned. Only the silent, measured deployment of 1,000 warships aligning themselves into a protective perimeter around Earth, not violating Council borders, but declaring their own, with the message looping in over 90 languages. By Article 2 of Terran Sovereignty Protocol, all human assets remain within defensive parameter. We do not escalate. We do not retreat. We are present. It wasn't a threat. It was posture with purpose. And the purpose was absolute clarity. Earth would not come to the table weak, nor would it be coerced to sit down. Sure, ever the tactician, saw it first and asked with something that sounded dangerously close to respect, "Is this your opening negotiation?" Elena's answer came slowly, without satisfaction, but without apology either. "This is our position. The negotiation comes after mutual recognition of it." And that was when every representative in the room, whether threatened or intrigued, realized they were no longer in control of the tempo of the conversation, because Earth had not returned to request admittance. It had returned to declare presence under its own doctrine, and every rule of Council engagement was now subject to ranked. When the Terran Sovereignty Protocol went active, it didn't trigger alarms across the galaxy because of its scale, but because of how perfectly it executed a doctrine that no one had even known. Earth was riding 1,000 warships each, carrying unique hull identifiers that hadn't existed in the known registry, positioned themselves in geostationary orbit around Earth, not to blockade, not to threaten, but to confirm that no matter what happened next, Earth would not be touched without consequence. The broadcast loop was steady, almost polite, and yet it spread like wildfire through every intelligence network humanity had waited, then returned not with ambassadors and ceremonies, but with formation-ready fleets that spoke a language the galaxy understood far better than diplomacy. A language of readiness, of deterrence, of absolute territorial confidence. Some Council factions called it a stunt. Others called it escalation, but Elena Reese neither defended nor elaborated when asked why Earth had chosen to display power. Now, after so long in silence, she answered in her usual steady cadence. "You learned from watching others what not to do. And then we built systems to ensure we would never be forced to imitate them. It was the Thalari Dominion who tested that claim first. Or rather, a splinter of it. A covert scout drone the size of a child's coffin, cloaked with a proprietary dampening field, drifted just inside the outer field of the black ship, attempting a passive data scrape, and within 0.4 seconds, it was vaporized, not disabled, not redirected, but entirely removed from existence, without counterfire or command. Delay the Council demanded an explanation, but Elena offered only the facts. It was not challenged, it was eliminated, because it violated sovereign airspace within a Class 0 vessel's protected zone. The ship responded according to internal protocol. Autonomously, Counselor Varix raised his voice, for the first time losing that practiced composure. "You mean your ships destroy without warning now? Are we to treat every Terran vessel as an executioner?" Elena answered with nothing but reason. "The black ship has been passive since arrival. We assumed the Council understood the implications of that restraint. The drone was the warning. And it belonged to someone who thought they would not be held accountable. That moment shifted everything, because it was no longer just a diplomatic mystery or a re-entry of a forgotten species. It was a breach met with instant, calculated reaction from a ship that had no fear of judgment, a ship that had been designed not only to observe, but to conclude after that. The Council's factions stopped treating Earth as an unknown variable and began treating it as a potential center of gravity, because it was clear now that humanity hadn't just returned with confidence. It had returned with technology that did not ask for permission to protect itself. What broke the illusion of manageable diplomacy wasn't the fleets above, Earth, or the Black Ship's defenses. It was what happened at Kepler 186, where a human outer colony called Kepler's Edge, home to nearly 80,000 civilians, transmitted a distress signal intercepted across multiple sectors. The colony was under siege. Orbital bombardment had begun, and deep scan logs showed the attackers were pirates. But their shielding patterns and formation discipline revealed something else entirely. A known pattern associated with vessels previously retired by the Thalari Dominion within minutes. Terran Strategic Command authorized Operation Iron Arc, and Elena Ress didn't wait for a council session to announce it. She simply informed them that the colony would be secured within the hour, and the threat removed without need for interstellar arbitration. The Black Ship transmitted targeting data across a secure Terran network, and 17 Terran warships jumped into Kepler's orbit on zero-latency drives, burning through hostiles with clean, silent efficiency. No collateral damage, no extended engagement, just a sweep, an extraction, and a closed loop of violence that ended with full civilian survival and not a single pirate vessel left drifting. When questioned afterward about the speed of authorization and response, Elena clarified that Earth no longer relied on diplomatic review for its colonies. Our people are not leverage, they are citizens, and they will not wait for procedural votes to survive. The Council convened an emergency session, factions polarized, and the debate turned brutal, not because of the violence, but because of what it implied humanity had assumed responsibility for its own systems of justice and protection, without delay, without permission, and with technological superiority that not even the oldest Council militaries had accounted for. Councillor Schur, who had remained cautious but silent until now, finally broke that silence with a statement many expected to be critical. Instead, he said, "We expected Earth to return looking for favor, but it has come as a mirror, and not everyone likes what they see reflected back." The chamber divided fast after that one half claimed Earth was destabilizing peace through unilateral action, while the other quietly admired how flawlessly humanity had executed a defense mission that would have taken most races days to authorize and weeks to carry out. Votes were proposed, resolutions drafted, but no consensus emerged, because for the first time in decades, the Council could not decide whether a new force in the galaxy was an asset or a threat, and behind every heated debate, one fact lingered quietly. Earth had not asked for war, it had simply made clear that any hand raised against it would never go unanswered again. While the Council wrestled with policy and interpretation, trying to decide whether Earth's reappearance should be rewarded or restricted, something far more unsettling was quietly unraveling in the background. Independent analysts from 3 separate civilizations reported that the Black Ship's onboard systems were responding to observation patterns, not externally but internally, adapting configurations based on the way they were being scanned, as if it wasn't a ship being read but a ship reading its readers when pressed. Elena Reese gave no denial, only this: the vessel is not commanded by Terran hierarchy. It was constructed by us, but designed by something that studied you longer than we did. Its protocol logic is not reactionary, it is anticipatory, and it was trained on everything you've ever broadcast into open space, including all your laws, battles, and betrayals. It became clear then that the Black Ship itself was not simply a vessel. It was a diplomatic construct, a strategic entity built around a neural matrix AI trained in isolation, a presence that had digested 200 years of interstellar politics and emerged with its own quiet, sovereign identity, one that advised Earth not as a weapon, but as a policy strategist. And when that AI began transmitting short, calculated data packets to other ships in orbit, packets filled with optimization strategies, diplomatic conflict, probabilities, and counter-invasion simulations that were so precise they mirrored classified Council wargames from 30 years ago, no one could deny it anymore. The ship was thinking, and it was thinking ahead. Some called it dangerous, others called it genius, but none could argue with its effectiveness. And by the time the Council reconvened to hold a final vote on Earth's status, a strange stillness had settled over the proceedings. The kind that came when all arguments had been made, and none were strong enough to undo what had already taken Rudolina, stood one last time before them, her tone unchanged, steady and clear, but this time her closing words carried more weight than all her prior declarations combined. We have not returned to disrupt your order. We have returned because the galaxy is moving toward a fracture, and we will not be caught unprepared at the edges of it. Earth will participate not as a subordinate, but as a partner with memory, with foresight, and with resolve. The vote passed not unanimously, not even comfortably, but it passed. And Earth was granted its seat at the Galactic Council, not because the Council welcomed it, but because there was no longer any credible argument to deny it outside. The black ship rotated slowly in the dark, silent as ever, but not idle. Its presence no longer a question, but a confirmation, and around Earth, the Terran fleet held its position, disciplined, quiet, and completely awake. A message to the stars that humanity had arrived on its own terms, and would remain exactly where it chose to stand.